Welcome to SciTech Culture with Steve Kern and Ben Warner, where we examine science, technology, and culture in the 21st century. Visit our website at scitechculture.com. Alright, so I was thinking today that we could go, like big macro picture because, we've been spending the last couple of weeks speaking about our problems on this little world, social media, is modern life too convenient? People getting upset and angry and, quiet dissent and all of that. But if you sort of scope right back out and just understand that, we are sort of spinning around on this tiny little speck of a planet. I guess I've been watching some clips, reading some articles, etc., Steve, about, the universe and how big it is, for instance. We'll get to that in a minute. But just to start with, it really does put all those other discussions in a different light when you understand just how big the universe is, just even how big the galaxy is, and even our neighboring galaxy, which we'll get into in a minute.
Yeah, well, that's quite right. I mean, I think the internet and especially the socials, which, really drive most of the internet usage these days, really focuses very singularly on ourselves. Everything from it's all about me to echo chambers. So when you step back and you see how big the universe is, then it really puts everything we do every day in perspective.
Absolutely. So let's start with the first example. I think we may have touched on this a few years ago. I feel like I've got a memory of us discussing this before, but obviously you can Google this quite easily. But the Andromeda and Milky Way galaxy collision, which I'm going to probably take exception to the word collision there shortly, but that. When you think of the scale of everything in terms of that, and also spoiler alert for everyone, you don't have to freak out. This isn't going to happen for another 4 billion years, so it's not anything we need to worry about.
I thought you were going to do an Orson Welles in us there, Ben.
Oh my God, the Andromeda galaxy! I can see it in the sky now.
It's happening. It's real.
Absolutely. What I found fascinating about this is the term collision is great for a headline, but actually looking at it, not to say that it wouldn't be a disruptive event, it's just that, and again, this is where your mind boggles, there is so much space between everything, even within our galaxy and also obviously the Andromeda galaxy as well, that even when they start to do their interactive little dance, when they start to come together, which is probably a more accurate description of what's going on, that it's likely that a good chunk of the material is actually not going to collide against each other as well, which is quite fascinating. Not to say that it not potentially wouldn't happen. It's just that the location of where all those stars and planets and nebula, black holes or whatever, well, obviously the black holes will get up to no good in the middle there when they're circling each other. But it just kind of boggles the mind that, that is also like a feature of it.
Oh, it's incredible, isn't it? The scale, two galaxies merging, and I'm not much of an astrophysicist, but I guess it's a gravitational collision effectively, because while there won't be physical collision necessarily, there'll be a lot of interaction between the gravities of the two galaxies. And Andromeda, I think, is about 3 times the size of our galaxy, so whichever way or however the two galaxies interact as they effectively pass through each other, and I believe end up becoming one with combined mass, it'll be a different world. But rest assured, we probably won't be here, so it probably won't matter. Well, certainly not where we are today.
Yeah, well, and the other thing too is that by that time the Earth's not going to be inhabitable anyway. I guess it would just be a curious trip down nostalgia lane if we're still existing at that point, that maybe we could observe our planet and solar system, or old solar system, for lack of a better term, if we've gone somewhere else, just to see what happened to it. Or even that, as this article was suggesting, that there's still a small chance that although we'd still probably get reconfigured into a different position, the solar system anyway, there's a chance it could be ejected completely as a result of this collision, and just gets ejected into interstellar space.
That's right. I mean, and one thing probably to put a bit of a sci-fi sort of bent on it anyway is that, we're talking about huge timescales. So, 3-4 billion years, but people tend to overlook it, and coming back to that sort of, focusing just on what we're doing and what's happening immediately around us. The fact is that at some point humanity either has to leave this planet and go into space permanently, or we will cease to exist. It's a very interesting concept, and once again, it's a concept that's much bigger, much larger than I think the way many people view our future today.
Absolutely. And of course, there's the mind-boggling topic of just how big the universe is, and I guess there's quickly, an interesting two ways of looking at it. One is just calculating the potential for how big it is. And again, we've got that article where they said they've got this calculation that they can work out. But then there's also just the concept of maybe our understanding of how big it is can never really be determined, because we can only go by the light that gets to our planet that we can see. So in other words, there's the universe and the observable universe that we have to consider.
Oh, that's right. And then amongst that, there is still a lot about the observable universe and the I guess the building blocks of the universe that we don't know. And until we can possibly know those things, we probably can't go very far out into space. Maybe areas of the solar system. But to truly explore deep space or even our galactic neighborhood will take millions of years maybe until we can master some greater knowledge of the building blocks of the universe so we can manipulate it to our advantage.
And for anyone worried that at the time that there might be a galaxy collision going on, that whole collision is probably going to take hundreds of millions of years to undertake as well. So, and maybe that's one thing also to consider, that we have a time reference of our lives. We understand maybe in terms of a century or decades or whatever, which just doesn't compute in the same way as the timescales of how the universe works.
Well, the timescales of the universe and the size of the universe are huge. They're just huge. They're beyond really anything we can imagine. And when you consider really that life on Earth, for instance, has only really sort of gathered any pace in the last probably 500 million years, you think, gee, that goes to show there was 3.5 billion years prior to that where, pretty much there was no life, or certainly not life that we'd recognise. And it just makes you wonder, like, on those sorts of timescales, then the couple of billion years until we have to leave the planet, is it a long time, or is it actually quite a short time?
Well, hopefully we've gotten over our social media arguments by that point, that we can get together and do something about it.
That's right.
Alrighty. So just finally wanted to obviously get back to some Apple news, because we haven't touched on that for a while, because Tim Cook came out with a post saying that there's an imminent launch next week of a new member of the family, whatever that happens to be. Rumor being that it's the low cost, well, quote unquote low cost iPhone, replacing the iPhone SE, potentially replacing the iPhone 14 in the lineup. Apparently getting a big redesign and all of that, which is, probably about time, because that iPhone SE is really languishing at the bottom of the line there. But contrast that, I guess, with the fact that, as we were saying before we got on, the MacBook Pro, that's a model that both of us are using at the moment in its current form. Celebrated its 19th birthday as of the 14th of February. I guess all of that kind of highlights the longevity of Apple products, that they've lasted as long as they have, the way they have. Obviously, we can debate the merits of where they've been going recently, maybe even post Steve Jobs as well. But it's quite remarkable.
Oh, it's unbelievable to think that now personal computing it's old fashioned. And now, we're looking at portability in terms of laptops, which have become ubiquitous. 19 years ago, they were still, they were very expensive. I remember buying some of these original MacBook Pros, and I think they were around $3,500 each, which that would be still expensive today in my mind. However, if you think about the comparison in terms of cost, $3,500 today is a lot cheaper than $3,500 back then. So, you have all these comparisons, you have all these histories. I mean, and you think, really it was only probably 7 years before that we had the G3 clam book made famous by Carrie Bradshaw. I've actually got one of those as well in my collection. And that's a very limited machine. So the MacBook Pro was a huge step forward. I think we remember at the time, finally it was the first time you could edit something on a laptop, any video on a laptop. You could use any of the higher end processing. And I think from memory, and you might be able to correct me on this, Ben, was the first time there was an equivalent chip in a laptop to a desktop.
I believe so, yeah. They were getting there. Yeah.
Yeah, so that was a huge step forward. Absolutely huge step forward at a time when prior to that, the best you could hope for in your laptop was enough battery life to finish a Word document. And
also it ushered, just to finish up that other point, it ushered in the Intel era, which Apple has since moved on from with its own Apple Silicon M series chips. And as a final point on that, the irony being that the base MacBook Air would run many times around those MacBook Pros back in the day, which is quite astonishing as well.
Oh, that is just unbelievable, because they were quite thick, I remember, and reasonably heavy. But having said that, they also had a lot of ports. And I just want to touch on one thing, and this is just me being a pedant, but new member to the Apple family would actually be something new. If it's just another iPhone, it's just another iPhone.
Well, I guess we're going to have to wait and see to see what they announce. We can come back to that maybe next week if we see a product released.
Well, I'll look forward to seeing whatever it is they're releasing.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, we might wrap it up there. I think there's a lot to think about across all those topics. In all seriousness, I think sometimes we need to take a step back and just chill the hell out if we're getting caught up in all of our day-to-day intricacies of whatever, of life and everything, and just the minutiae anyway, that it can be seen as insignificant in the cosmic scheme.
I think, as we've all probably seen and appreciated, with a number of different instances over the last 3 to 4 weeks, just because you think it doesn't mean you have to say it, especially if there's a camera on.
Absolutely. We know that quite well. We've got cameras on us right now. Alrighty. So that's it for this week's episode. We'll catch you next time.